Hello everyone and welcome to my review of the 2021 Lexus IS350 F-Sport. Now there's something I need to get clear from the top. I quite like this IS350 as a formula. I think it drives really well. I think the interior is exceptionally built, and with this new redesign, I think it is the best looking vehicle in its class. But although I think all these things, I could never own this IS350 or any current IS, and I'll get into why I feel that way later on in the video. But let's get some of the quick facts over and done with. The IS350 for 2021 was significantly revised, but it is on the same platform that debuted with the previous generation product. Yes, I think it's a little bit liberal to call this new IS a next generation product because it's on the same platform, but they have made the structure a little more rigid. Lexus says that a few of the suspension components have gone on a diet, so there's a little bit of weight savings, but yes, this isn't as fresh or as new as a product that the latest BMW 3 Series is, or the new Mercedes C-Class. Saying that though, I don't think the IS feels particularly behind the times. It does have fairly similar technology. It has most of the things that you would expect out of any car of this class, but there are a couple things that carbon date it. Now, outside of the exterior design for 2021, there's been a couple changes for the interior. We now have this touchscreen, and here in this top model that I'm driving, it's a 10.3-inch screen, which, like I said, is touchscreen. Lexus has received enough flack with their user interface in the past with this touchpad down below that they caved, and they obviously listened to consumer demand or whatever their dealerships were saying, or people like me were saying. Yes, the touchpad wasn't as easy as a touchscreen, but I didn't think it was so horrible that you couldn't use it. But the system still remains, so if you're ever in the situation for whatever reason you can't use the touchscreen, you can still swipe along and select things, even in Apple CarPlay. Now, with the touchscreen, it has been brought forward about 3 inches, so I can easily reach for anything on the screen without having to alter my driving position at all. So now you have two different ways to interact with the Lexus UI, and that, in my opinion, is a good thing. Another big change for the interior is the material use for the deck that is your climate control system, interacting with your media, those kind of things. Because in years past, this piano black section used to be the same material that's found just below here on the center tunnel, and it's really the only piano black finishing in this cabin. It feels really out of place, and yes, of course, it's going to get dusty and fingerprinty, and the way that this slightly sparkly gray material down here wouldn't. So that change doesn't make sense to me, and I also think it is at a little bit of a loss for the Lexus interior overall. And then outside of that, we've got a little bit of a different design to the steering wheel, the vents are different, and like I said at the beginning, think this is an exceptionally well-built product. Yes, this one is perhaps a little bit dark. There's nothing really sexy about this cabin, I'd say, but over rough roads, nothing rattles, nothing squeaks. The fit and finish is just as fantastic as you would expect from the most expensive Lexus products, and it's a really quiet vehicle, separating itself from the wind and the road incredibly well. Now, with the IS350 F-Sport that I'm trying out, I have the 3.5-liter naturally aspirated V6 mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission, and in Canada, if you get a V6, you have to have it with all-wheel drive. It has 311 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, and it's interesting being in a vehicle like this that has a naturally aspirated motor where practically everything else in this class has some form of forced induction. It makes you feel at first that the Lexus is a little bit underpowered because you don't have that turbo boost. You don't have that nice little hit of torque if you just want mild acceleration onto an on-ramp, let's say, but I really like the way that this V6 revs out, and it sounds quite good. In this particular model I'm trying out, we have the Series 3 package for the F-Sport, and that brings along the adaptive variable suspension, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have the 19-inch BBS forged wheels. I think those look incredible. And something called active sound controls. Just this little dial here on the left-hand side, and it creates an augmented induction noise. But where I find very particular annoyance with so many other vehicles in this class, or from premium manufacturers now that have to create sort of fake audio and send it through the sound system to make you feel a little more connected to the engine. This, when it's on or off, I think actually works really well. That's something I never thought I'd ever say. Now, saying that, I'd rather keep it off for the sake of having a little more authentic connection to the engine. But if there's ever an instance where you want to show off a little bit more to your passengers, that active sound control system is subtle enough that even car people, if they didn't know that little dial was there, wouldn't know that the induction noise coming in was fake. So talking more about driving with the adaptive variable suspension, you'll really feel the difference going from normal, sport, and sport plus mode here in the IS350. I love the way the standard setup is. Obviously a sports sedan, very involving on the road, and with this nicely weighted steering, it makes you feel like every input that you're giving towards the IS is immediately put into the road. For me, the biggest difference you'll notice when the adaptive suspension is between normal and sport or sport plus is there's obviously less roll in the corners. So suspension, very good. Steering, lovely. And the brake feel is very nice too. But with the V6 and the all-wheel drive, you are reserved to the older 6-speed transmission. The IS200 with its turbocharged 4-cylinder engine and rear-wheel drive gets an 8-speed. Now, there's been more than a few occasions in this 6-speed transmission where there's been a couple of strange clunks where you don't really expect them. It's not like the engine's cold or the transmission's cold. And even though when you're in sport shifting, manual shifting, you can hold on to the revs for as long as you want. The car will not shift for a good few seconds unless you actually pull on the paddle yourself. But every once in a while, it does something that feels a little out of place, feels a little shocking, honestly. So the 6-speed transmission can occasionally let me down in the way that it's doing so well 90% of the time, but 10% of the time it just does something you really don't expect. But that is not the reason why I could never put an IS350 in my garage. And this issue is, yes, pertaining to me, an individual, but I think if you're anything like me in terms of size and height, that living with an IS would be potentially tricky. So what do I mean by that? First of all, with the IS, you have quite a tight pedal box. I don't feel like I have really any space to move my feet around, from the brake pedal to the dead space to really just the open space underneath the steering wheel. One matter causing that is because we've got this huge bulge from the transmission tunnel and the transfer case sending the power to the front wheel. So my right foot is always at a very strange angle, and it quickly gets tense because if I want to rest my foot on the brake or on the accelerator, it's unnatural. And then this whole space does feel very tight in of itself. I often can't get my knees in a position where, for one, I can get them supported by these heated and ventilated seats. So because I'm uncomfortable, I can't even, I think, give a good opinion on these seats because the seating position is a bit too high still. I wish it could go a lot lower and a lot further back, and then I'd want the steering wheel to come a lot closer to me too. So for me, there is no winning with this product, sadly. The only thing that's a saving grace for me with all of the issues that I have pertaining to just this space is that the right-hand side knee pad is very nicely foamed, so I can rest my leg up against there without getting a bruise. So if you're like me, I cannot encourage you enough to spend more than half an hour on a test drive of an IS if you're actually going out to buy one. If you're under, let's say, 5.5 feet, then this is a very, very good car. It's a good recipe that doesn't suit my tastes. So you can say, oh, it's just the driving position that's letting him down. But the driving position is the fundamental factor of being behind the steering wheel in a car. You've got to like this space that you're interacting with the steering wheel, with the brake pedal, and I have said that I like the way this thing drives, but I'm just not happy enough in this seat that any of the other merits can subsidize the discomfort that I'm feeling. Few other quick things to add on before I finish up this video. Alongside the driving space being quite tight, the second row of space is very, very tight. I can't sit behind myself no matter what I do. If anybody were to sit behind me, you would have to be a toddler, I think, not to complain. There's a sizable drivetrain tunnel, no surprise there. And if you drop the seats down, you'll see that there is a very tall lip if you ever needed to load something from the boot and onto the back seats. Not really the end of the world, but something to consider if you are regularly loading longer, heavier items into a vehicle, but I don't think you would really be considering a sedan if that was the case. And it's nice to know that underneath the false floor, you do have a space saver spare wheel. So there you have it. Those are all my thoughts with the Lexus IS350 all-wheel drive F-Sport Series 3. Like I said, I like the product, but I can't live with it. If you're someone that's shopping in this segment, then I'd say that the IS350, even though it isn't the newest, is still a very competent product. I'm sure it'll treat you well in the long run. And if you are particularly keen on getting a nice driving sports compact sedan, the IS350, I think, is one of the better choices out there. Just, if you're like me, if you're anything over 6 foot tall, then spend more time behind the wheel. The joy that this product might give you, I don't think would be enough to outweigh the potential issues that could come your way if you are somewhat like me in terms of height, in terms of size, and in terms of your regular driving style. So thank you very much for taking the time to watching this video, and I hope to see you again on the channel soon.